Outlook On is a format where we briefly look at a couple of policy topics or funding opportunities, and I'm very glad that we joined hand today with KoWi, and welcome Katharina Spannhake to the session of today, who is the expert and will lead you a bit later through the funding opportunities and the support mechanisms. Access to funding is crucial for high-quality research and development. That's what we know, and we know also that cross-border research and development is very important to foster its own careers, and that's why we look today at international funding opportunities. I would like to highlight that besides the national funding schemes such as VS Data offering, but also the German Research Foundation or the Alexander von Humboldt Foundation, in the German context over the last, let's say, 35 years, the funding by the European Union plays a significant and major role for cooperative research projects, but also for individual fundings. And we will see the numbers a bit later. Germany is member of the European Union. I don't need to explain that, but also member of the European Research Area. And researchers can access and use the funds to do their cutting-edge research in Germany. And that's why we decided to put up the session for today. In 2021, the new funding line Horizon Europe started, which is the main funding line for funding research in the European Union. It's a 7-year-long program with a budget of nearly 95 billion euros, so it's a substantial amount of money. And also, it is a funding scheme with focus on Europe. It's partially open for international cooperation. For cooperative projects, at the moment, the calls with India are on hold. We are waiting for the decision of the Department for Science and Technology for the co-funding schemes. But the good news is that in the individual funding programs, researchers from India can apply to the funding schemes of the European Union, and those we will present a bit later. So in today's Outlook, we will have a closer look, but also a look on the support mechanisms which offers Germany for international candidates, applicants, so that they succeed in the applications. For this web talk, we partnered up with KoWi. Now, KoWi stands in German for Kooperationsstelle EU der Wissenschaftsorganisationen, or better in English, the EU Liaison Office of the German Research Organizations. And it's a joint service platform of the major German science organizations, so the German Research Foundation and the DATA are members of KoWi. Amongst others, KoWi provides career-related and subject-specific advice on all instruments of the EU framework and on all the phases of an EU research project. I would like to ask the audience if you have any questions, please put them up in the chat. We will take that up a little bit later in the Q&A session after the presentation. And I'm very, very glad that we have Katharina Spannhake with us, connected from Bonn, who will lead us today through the funding opportunities and support services. She comes from a social science and humanities and worked at KoWi as an advisor for the ERC and the MSCA schemes. What this exactly means, she will explain. In addition to advising on proposals, she conducts interview trainings and information events, so also has quite a good insight on the application procedures. So, Katharina, over to you. The floor is yours. I'm looking forward to your presentation, and after the presentation, we will take up the questions from the chat.
Thank you for your nice introductory words, and hello from my side. I will share my screen now. Welcome from my side. I'm really glad to be here, or to be in Bonn, but to be virtually here in India. And yes, I'm really happy to introduce you now in the ERC starting grant and the MSCA postdoctoral fellowships. I will have my presentation, and after that we can, of course, answer your questions. So I will start now, clicking next page. Exactly. Okay. So Katja Lasch already said something about the framework program Horizon Europe, so I don't have to repeat everything. Here you can see the program graphic, and today we will focus on the first pillar. It's the Excellent Science pillar. And we will have a look on the European Research Council, so ERC, and the Marie Skłodowska-Curie Actions, MSCA. So I will always use these short abbreviations because they are too long to repeat them all again. And for the European Research Council, we have 16 billion euros to spend for 7 years. And for the MSCA, we have 6.6 billion euros to spend. So it's a lot of money to give for researchers. Horizon Europe has some country categories. So you can get funding from Horizon Europe if you are in the member state. And this includes also the overseas department like it is the case in France, for example. But you can get funding also if you're an associated country. So these are countries like Georgia, Iceland, Moldova, Turkey, but also Ukraine. And then we have third countries, and these are selected countries from Asia, Africa, and South America. You can participate in this funding scheme Horizon Europe without getting funding from the program. So this is for other further third countries like Japan, United States, China, Brazil. So these are countries who are really well developed and you can pay the researchers by their own. Then we have special arrangements with Switzerland, because now Switzerland counts as a third country because the exploratory talks on the association are suspended. And this is why Swiss institutions cannot be selected as host institutions. So it's not possible to do this Horizon Europe framework program funding with a Switzerland institution. Then we have special arrangements with the United Kingdom due to Brexit. Here they are considered as associated countries, but in our opinion, it's not a good idea to go to UK to do your research, because it's like playing poker. We never know if they will be really associated or not. And then there are now special arrangements with Ukraine. Ukraine is an associated country, but without financial contribution to MAGE in these 2 years. But I think you want to go to Germany. So Germany is, of course, a member of the European Union, so it's a EU member state, and here you get funding from Horizon Europe. So we will start with the European Research Council ERC starting grant. But first, I want to introduce you in the underlying principles and funding modalities on the ERC in general. So here you get a frontier research project, and you can do your own research project and you get European funding for that. There is a development of funding schemes, and this is scientific driven. So we have the Scientific Council, and your project can be open to all fields of research. So ERC is always bottom-up research. It must be investigator driven, and we have annual calls for the proposal. There is no restriction concerning your nationality or your age, but the only and the most important criteria is that you as a researcher and your project is scientific excellent. So this is the most important criteria for the evaluation. You get funding by the European Commission for you, the principal investigator, PI, and your project. And the support for researchers is that you can start or consolidate your own research project with your own team in Europe or associated country. You get 100% of funding, and you have the option to add 25%. So this is a huge amount of funding that you can get, and this funding covers all direct project costs. So like you can see here, living allowance, travel expenses, publication costs, and so on. But also if you need major equipment, for example, if you need to install a lab or something. And these 25% overhead costs, so this is for indirect costs. And today we focus on the starting grant funding schemes, but you can see we have 4 other funding schemes in the ERC. But today we focus on the starting grants, and here you are 2 to 7 years after your PhD. So what does this mean? You can apply if you are 2 to 7 years after your PhD, and here the date of the defense of your PhD is the most important date, because then we can start our eligibility check. You can get an extension I will explain you later on in exceptional cases, and if you are a medical doctor, we have special rules. In the starting grant, you can get for a maximum duration of 5 up to 1.5 million euros, and you have the option to add 1 million euro if you have to buy major equipment, or if you want to do field work, or if you have in your team some PIs from third countries. Your host institution must be in a member state or associated country, but this is no problem because Germany is it. And you have to spend at least 50% of your time on the project, and you have to spend at least 50% of your time in Europe. The procedure here is a single submission of the full proposal, and then there is a 2-step evaluation where in the second step an interview is included. And the call opens annually. As I said, now we will have a look at the extended eligibility. The calculation of the eligibility time window is always the time elapsed between the date of your defense of your PhD and the 1st January of the call year. And if you are, for example, a mother, then you get 18 months per child in general of extension. If you are a father, then you can get the documented time that you have taken for your parental leave. But there can be also other reasons for an extension after your PhD. So, for example, if you have a documented long-term illness, long means more than 90 days, then you can get this long-term illness time as an extension. Or if you have done clinical training, here you can get up to 4 years extension. Or if you have done national, military, civil service, this service time can be also extended on the eligibility. If you're a medical doctor, then we have different rules. So you, as a medical doctor, you have to need another PhD equivalence. So you need, on the one hand, an additional PhD after acquiring the medical doctor, or you need an appointment that requires doctoral equivalency, like a postdoc fellowship, a professorship, something like that. And the eligibility time window is a little bit different here. It's not 2 to 7 years after your PhD. For the starting grant, it's 4 to 9 years after your medical doctor. And please note that for you as a medical doctor, and if you have this Dr. Med degree instead of your medical doctor, then the dritte Staatsexamen, it's a German word, this is considered as the reference date. But I don't know if you have any German Dr. Med or dritte Staatsexamen, so maybe this note isn't important for you. So then keep in mind that you as a medical doctor, you are eligible if you are 4 to 9 years after your medical doctor. And if you have this additional PhD or a doctor equivalency position. Here you can see the eligibility check for the work program 2023. So we consider you are 2 to 7 years after your PhD, and the priority date is the 1st January next year. So you are eligible if you awarded your PhD in between 1st January 2016 to December 2020. So this in general, and then we can add your extension if you have. But keep in mind that if you want to apply for a starting grant, your PhD should be awarded between 2016 and 2020. We have some evaluation criteria for your project, so it's important that you are doing groundbreaking research. You should go beyond the state of the art and it should be innovative. Are there important challenges that you can or want to tackle? Do you use novel concepts? Do you go across disciplines? Is it a multidisciplinary approach, for example? And important is that your project is risky, so it's high risk, but if it is successful, the gain is enormous. So this means high risk, high gain. Make sure that you are not doing a research project who can be done by everybody and who is already done. It must be new and high risk, high gain. Then think about the feasibility of your project. You should use methodology which is appropriate. Appropriate means that you should do, or that you can do this research in the 5 years, that you are the right person to do your research, that at your host institution you have the options to do your project. Think about all these points. And then feasibility means also that the timescales, resources, and the PI commitment is adequate so that your project is feasible. But of course, we have evaluation criteria also for the PI, the principal investigator. So you should have, of course, the ability to conduct groundbreaking research. This is the most important thing because you are the PI, you have the expertise. But do you have also the capacity for creative, independent thinking? Are you an independent researcher? And have you the required scientific expertise and capacity to do your research? So if you want to apply, think about these and the other questions, and then you can write down some notes and then you can write your proposal. This is always helpful. I'm so sorry. So now we will have a look at first reflections on your project. Here we have 5 more questions which you can answer by yourself before you write your proposal. So think about that you can explain in your proposal your project idea briefly and concisely. Which important challenges will you tackle? So societal, scientific, economic, technical, what else? So there should be a gain for Europe in the best case. Think about the novel aspects and why your research is groundbreaking and what is the impact on your research field. How will your research project go beyond the state of the art? And of course, in combination, project, researcher, why are you the right person to do this research? Here we have a look at the proposal part. So we have part A. They are called administrative forms. So here you have to give some general information on you, your team, your project. Then you should list all participants and contact details. And we have a questionnaire on ethics, because sometimes ethics is really important. For example, if you're working with data or people, then you have to click sometimes yes, and you have to explain if you are working with these ethics topics carefully. Then we have some call-specific questions, because from call to call there are different some changes, and then we have some questions on the time commitment. How many time do you want to spend on your research project? And in the end, there are some questions on budget and resources. So this is the administrative part, and in part B, we have your content. Here you have 2 parts, B1 and B2. And B1 consists of the extended synopsis, your CV, and a track record. And then we have B2, and B2 is the whole scientific proposal. And after part B, we have annexes, and they are really important to do your eligibility check. You need your host institution support letter. This is the host institution binding statement of support. So this is important because then the reviewers can see that you have a host institution in Europe or associated country to do your research. Of course, they need your PhD certificate to do this eligibility check, and if applicable, you need further documents, for example, to check your maternity leave. Now we have a look at part B in detail, because this is part of my job. You can send me your part B of your proposal, and then I will read through and give you feedback. So this is really important, because this is the part of the whole proposal which will be read by the evaluators. So in the first evaluation step, they only have a look at part B1. Here they have this extended synopsis, which is 5 pages long, your CV, 2 pages, and a track record, 2 pages. So B1 is really important because B1 is read by generalists. So, for example, if you are working on space research, then we have so many different cases in this space research topics. And in B1, there are persons who are not only, I don't know, black holes researchers who are reading your proposal. There are so many other different research disciplines who are reading your proposal. Of course, they are all able to understand space research. There are no social scientists, for example, but they are generalists. So please make sure that here you write your proposal for generalists. And B1 is your invitation card for the next evaluation step, because you only move on to the second step if your B1 and if your first evaluation is good. And in the second evaluation step, they will read B1 and B2. So here in B2, you can write your proposal for specialists. So you can go really deep and explain it on a highly scientific level. Now we will have a detailed look in the different parts. So your extended synopsis, 5 pages long. Here you should present your scientific project in a concise way. You should think about the groundbreaking nature of your research project, and you should demonstrate the feasibility of your scientific approach. Your CV is a standard academic and research record, but I would say it's great to use the template which you can download in this European tool, which will explain you later on. But it's a standard academic CV. And here it's great if you have career gaps, then you should explain it here, because nothing more worse than having some career gaps without an explanation. And we have this funding idea here. Funding ID has no page limits, and here you can list all your past and ongoing grants. The track record is also 2 pages long, and here you should list all your publications in peer-reviewed international journals. You should add some conference proceeding, monographs, patents if you have, invited presentations, or if you have some prizes, awards, memberships. So this track record underlines your scientific expertise. And part B2 consists of 14 pages. And here you can explain in detail the state of the art and the objectives, make clear that you have understandable objectives in the context of your research field, that your proposal is impactful, and that you want to challenge important aspects. And to challenge these aspects, it's great to have a multi or interdisciplinary approach. Concerning the methodology, you should think about explaining your goals and your research stages, think about the novel and unconventional aspects, and think about these high-risk, high-gain balance. And after that, there is a resources section, and here you have 8,000 letters to explain your needed resources. And of course, they should be fully justified. Now we will have a look at the evaluation basis. So it's a peer review evaluation, and we have 1 panel chair and 10 to 15 panel members, and we have research field specific evaluation panels. So this is important because, of course, every proposal will find the right panel. You don't have to be afraid that your space research project will be read by, I don't know, a historian. So we have 3 different scientific domains. We have the physical sciences and engineering domains, and here we have 11 panels. We have life sciences domain, and here we have 9 panels, and 7 panels are the social sciences and humanities domain. And here as an applicant, you choose your panel and you indicate 1 or more keywords, and these keywords are helpful that your proposal will find the right panel. And in advance, you can exclude up to 3 reviewers. Here you can see the evaluation process. So first, of course, there's the submission of the full proposal, and then there will be the eligibility check. If this check is successful, then your proposal will move on to step 1. And here in the remotely evaluation phase, there is the evaluation of the proposal by the panel members. They will read it at home, at the beach, at a cafe, wherever they want, and then they have the first panel meeting. After this panel meeting, your proposal will pass to step 2 if your proposal is good enough. And in the second step, there is an individual assessment of the full proposal by the panel members and referees. Referees are people who are specialists in your field. And then after this, there's the second panel meeting. And here, you as an applicant, you are invited to an interview. And in this interview, you have to present your project, and there is a Q&A session. And the referees in the second step, they will write down some questions, and these questions will be asked in this interview session. And then after the interview, there will be a panel chairs meeting, and then they will consolidate 3 main domains, rank, list. So not only writing your proposal is important to get the grant, your interview is also really important, because your interview can influence your position on this ranking list. And of course, if you are on top of the ranking list, this is really great. But if you are on top of the ranking list, it's not sure that you will get funding, because of course there's so many people on this ranking list. So this is why the interview is really important, because you can move on a little more on top or on the bottom of the rank list. And after this panel chairs meeting, they will consider the proposals and they will inform the applicants. Here you can see a time frame, so it takes approximately 1 year to get the funding. For the starting grant, we had the deadline in October, and then the first panel meeting will be in March next year. In May next year, they will inform the applicants about the first evaluation step. So if you are successful, the second evaluation panel will meet in June next year, and in August, they will inform the applicants. But what happens if you are not so successful? So here we have some resubmission rules, and they depend always on the work program, because there are little changes from year to year. So it's important that you keep an eye on the right work program to understand your resubmission rules. So let's have a look at this table here. For example, if you have submit your proposal 2020 and before, and you get an A, then you are in the first evaluation step, by the way, then you are eligible to resubmit in the following call, so 2028 one, and you are eligible to submit in 2020. But if you get an B, then you are only you can only submit in 2020 and before, and in 21, because if you get a B at the first step, you must suspend a call, and then you can only resubmit under the next program. So if you get in 2021 a B, then you can't resubmit in 2022, but you can resubmit in 2023. And if you get a C rating, then you have to suspend 2 rounds of calls, and then you can submit in the 3rd round. Here you can see the ERC success rates from the last 4 years. So it's highly competitive. So you can see that they are in between 10 to 14%, so highly competitive, but nevertheless, it's really great to submit a proposal because you can see some people, they have they're lucky ones and they have the grant. We have, as I said 2 slides before, we have the deadline some weeks ago. So this call is closed, but of course you can apply for the next call. In the end of this ERC presentation, I want to inform you about the application process. So as I said, we have this annually calls and we have a deadline. You should submit your proposal, of course, together with your host institution, because you should do your research at this specific host institution. So this is important that you work together. And you won't write an email here, hello, Mr., Mrs., here is my proposal. No, you have to submit it on the Funding and Tenders portal of the European Commission. It's a huge portal. There you find all needed documents, and it's always a good idea to have a look on this Funding and Tenders portal before you submit your proposal, because first you find all the needed documents there, but it's a huge portal and it's not that easy to understand. So make you familiar with this portal, and then it's easier to get along. And I said important documents. So on this Funding and Tenders portal, you will find the ERC work program. You will find some rules for submission and the evaluation. You will find some guidelines and informations for the applicants, and you will find the current research proposal template. And it's always important that you use the current template, because from year to year there are little changes in this template, and so it's important that you have a look at the Funding and Tenders portal and download the right template for your call. Now I have some statistics for you. So Germany is really good in ERC funding. As you can see here, we are on the 2nd place. Only UK is on the 1st. So it's great to do European research funding in Germany. As you can see here, most of the funded grants are starting grants. So this is the yellow mark here. So I know it's highly competitive, but if you are in Germany, then you have a good chance to get the grant. Here you can see the starting grant 2021-2022 submissions from host institution countries. And here you can see that Germany is on the 1st range. So we had more than 600 submissions in 2021. So it's huge. And here you can see in the starting grant 2021 call, here you can see the grantees by country of host institution and domain. So you can see we had approximately 30 grantees from the life sciences, and then approximately 30 from physical sciences and engineering, and 14 from the social sciences and humanities. And of course, we offer our services for you to get help and to get in touch with all these European funding. So you can get general information on the ERC, like this information event, but also you can contact us and write an email to get more information. We have advice on the grant application and the grant management. And here we are working closely together with the host institutions. Then we offer an individual proposal check 3 weeks before the deadline. You can send us your proposal, we will read it, and then we will give you feedback. Then we offer events where we inform you on the news and everything important which can be helpful for your proposal writing. And it's always a good idea to submit to our newsletter and to have a look at our website, where you can find all information in German and English. So here you can see some screenshots. You can have a look at our National Contact Point website on the left, or you can go directly to the ERC website. And for people who like videos, then you can have a look at YouTube. Here we have these ERC classes. These are short videos organized and filmed by the ERC. And I think they are really nice, and it's easy to understand what the ERC is about and how you can do your application process. Then you can have a look at the ERC website, and you can have a look at a dashboard. Here you can see all funded project NPIs and to get an impression of ERC funded projects, and to think about why your project could be on this, this map too. And here you can see the panel structure for the current call. So as I said, we have different panels so that every proposal and every PI will find the right funding panel. So for example, physical sciences and engineering. So here you can see PE9, universe science. So if you are a space researcher, then of course you should type PE9. But if you are doing some interdisciplinary research, maybe you are working on PE9 and PE1 because mathematics can be combined with universe science. So this is why you can use these keywords, and then they will think about where your proposal is better. So have a look at these different panels, and then I'm sure that your panel, that you will choose the right panel for your project. And now we will move on to the Marie Skłodowska-Curie Actions MSCA postdoctoral fellowships. And here we have to distinguish between beneficiaries and associated partners. Beneficiaries, they have the responsibility for executing the proposed program, and they contribute directly to your training program. They provide secondment opportunities, and in the end of this whole application process, they sign the grant agreement. Associated partners, on the other side, they may not employ researchers under the action. They offer training and secondment opportunities, and they have to charge their costs to the beneficiaries. They have to provide a letter of commitment for the proposal, and they don't sign the grant agreement. Then we have to distinguish between the academic sector and the non-academic sector. Academic sector can be any public or private higher education establishment. It can be a public or private non-profit research organization, or it can be an international European interest organization like the CERN in Switzerland, for example, but don't go to Switzerland. Then we have the non-academic sector, and this is really easy because this can be any socio-economic actor who's not included in the academic sector. So for example, if you are working in life sciences, then you can work with BioNTech or any other economic actor who can be helpful for your postdoctoral fellowship. The MSCA is what? So what are the aims of the MSCA? First of all, they want to strengthen the European research area, and of course they want to encourage people to embark on research careers in Europe. Here, the mobility is really important because they want to increase mobility through exchanging staff, knowledge, and technology. Here we have the 3 I's. Your mobility should be international, interdisciplinary, and intersectoral. The MSCA wants furthermore to promote the researcher's career development. This is why they provide training for key competences in science and industry, and they have fair and attractive working conditions for the researchers. We have to classify your research experience. If you are a doctoral candidate, then you have not awarded doctoral degree at the date of the recruitment. If you are a postdoctoral researcher, then you must be a postdoctoral researcher at the date of the call deadline, and you should have successfully defended your doctoral thesis. As I said, mobility is key, so we have this mobility rule here. This rule says that a fellow has lived or worked less than 12 months within the past 3 years in the potential host country. So we have this example here with a French guy, but of course we can use an Indian guy. So an Indian researcher has lived in Germany for the last 4 years. Then you are not eligible for fellowship in Germany. But now I will move on to the French researcher because this is European. Then he or she can do the research in France or in any other member state or associated country. But this is really, really important because for the MSCA, you should keep this mobility rule in your mind because, for example, if you are working or living in Germany for more than 12 years within the last 3 years, then an MSCA fellowship in Germany is not possible for you. In the postdoctoral fellowships, we have global and European fellowships. It's easy. The European postdoctoral fellowships, they are always only in the member states or associated countries, and the global postdoctoral fellowships, they are all around the world. You need to do your research a host institution. Who can be your host institution? This can be any public or private institution conducting research in or outside Europe. So, of course, universities, higher education institutions, research centers or institutes, like Katja said in the beginning. This can be industry companies like small and medium enterprises. This can be non-profit organizations, but also governmental organizations or these international European interest organizations. So you can find a host institution, of course. Now we will have a deeper look at the European Postdoctoral Fellowship. Here you are doing your research project in Europe, so in a member state or associated country. But I think you want to do your research in Germany, so let's talk about Germany as research project country. You are eligible for doing this postdoctoral fellowship if you are a postdoctoral researcher with less than 8 years of full-time postdoctoral research experience, and we have no nationality restriction here. These 8 years mean departing from periods outside research and career breaks, as well as periods that you have spent in a third country.
Katharina, sorry to interrupt. Can we wind up a bit? We have a couple of questions and it's already 50 minutes past. So
yes, of course.
We can speed up a bit so to take up a couple of questions. Yes.
Okay, so I said mobility rule, I think it's clear, but if not, you can ask me later on. Then you have the option to do a secondment. You can go in the secondment phase optionally worldwide for maximum 1/3 of your project duration, and your project is up to 1 to 2 years. And you can add in the end 6 months in the non-academic sector in Europe. The procedure is here that you write jointly with your host institution your application, and at your host institution you get research and skill training. And the Global Postdoctoral Fellowship, here you are doing a research project in a third country and then you go back to Europe. This is important because you should bring back the knowledge made in the third country to Europe, because in the end it's European taxes that will pay you and your research project. You are eligible if you are a postdoc with less than 8 years of research experience, and your proposal must have reached a quality threshold of 70% for resubmission. Here we have a nationality restriction because it must be your nationality must be of a member state or associated country, or you must be a long-term resident. So you have to live at least 5 years in a member state or associated country. Mobility rules, secondment is always the same here, and you have to spend 1 to 2 years in the third country. This is your outgoing phase, and then you have 1 year obligatory return phase in Europe. And you have the option to add 6 months placement. The procedure and the contents of the fellowship are identical. Here you can see some legal and financial deliverables. So you have to submit a lot of documents. I don't think I have to explain them. You can see it in this funding and tenders portal. So it's a lot of documents that you have to submit. It's important that you submit and answer all of these documents. Here you can see how long it takes from submission to funding. So approximately it takes 1 year to submit and then to get the grant. And if the signature of the grant agreement is in May next year, then you can start your working in the next month. So June next year, you can start your proposal in this call. You can get allowances in the MSCA. So we have different allowances here. And these numbers here, they are in gross. So you get a living allowance, a mobility allowance, a family allowance if you have family, and a long-term leave allowance. Furthermore, if you need to elaborate a lab or something, you can get a special needs allowance. The institution gets only money for research, training and networking costs and for management and overhead costs. The evaluation process looks like this. So each proposal will be evaluated by at least 3 reviewers. And then we have evaluation criteria, and they are scored from 0 to 5. We have 3 phases of evaluation. First, it's an individual evaluation. Then we have a consensus meeting, and in the end, there's a panel review, and they will create a panel ranked list, and then you get informed about your status of this panel ranked list. We have 3 evaluation criteria. So excellence. Excellence is the most important criteria and has a rating of 50%. Then we have impact with 30% rating and implementation of 20%. And we have 8 main evaluation panels. So of course, your MSCA proposal will find the right panel. Here you can see the call. It's the last call, so it's closed. But of course, we have a next call. So have a look at the MSCA website. And now we have some statistics here. Sorry, the MSCA are also highly competitive. Every European funding is highly competitive. So here you can see that we had in general more than 8,300 proposals submitted. And in the end, only 1,156 proposals are retained for funding. So it's highly competitive. You can see it here. The European funding has a success rate of 13.8% and the global fellowship of 16%. So highly competitive, but if you get the grant, it's really, really nice push for your career. And here you can see postdoctoral fellowship with a German beneficiary. So most of the MSCA projects are done with a university, and then we have 41% of non-academic research organizations in the European fellowships. And now maybe you have the question, how can I get a grant? How can I get a host institution? Then you can have a look at our MSCA matchmaker. You will find it on our website. It's a virtual bulletin board, and here you can find host institution. So if you're a postdoc, then you can type here where you want to go, which project, which scientific area is interesting for you, and then you can find a list of a host institution. And they are filtered by a scientific area and city. Of course, you can have a look at the MSCA website. There you can find all different funding schemes, and it's really helpful to have a look at this website. And then if you want to search for jobs and funding, you can have a look at the Eurexis platform. There you can type where you are and what you want. So it's really helpful to get an overview on jobs and funding. And there are some more websites. You can have a look at our KoWi website. You should have a look at the Funding and Tenders portal, and you can have a look at the National Contact Point for the MSCA. They have informations for you. For the MSCA, we have also really important documents. So we have the MSCA work program, we have guidelines for applicants, and we have this template here, and the template changes from call year to call year. And here you can find my contact details, and now I'm open for all your questions.
Thank you so much, Katharina, for the detailed overview and insights into the program. We've got a lot of questions with regard to PhD, and maybe I can sum them up. The presentation has been focused on postdoctoral scholarships for PhD funding. There is basically the darts there for Indians. So please, for your questions, go to one of our web sessions and inform yourself about the possibilities for PhD scholarships in all fields, which are offered by the German Academic Exchange Service. This session was a bit more focused on postdoctoral schemes. I think really interesting is the matchmaker, as you call them, to find a host institution. But I had one question here regarding the 50-50% of spending in the project. So you mentioned in one of the slides for the postdoctoral, for the ERC grant, that you have to spend minimum 50 times in your projects. And the question is, what about the other 50% of the time where you to stay?
Okay, so the other 50% you can spend at the beach, of course, or you can do other research, because normally you have 50% or I don't know, 70% for your ERC research project, but then you can have a national funding, some teaching, supervision, and so on. So we have the experience that typing 100% ERC is not great, because you are a researcher, you have to do other projects, and so this is why we say not more than 90% for ERC funding.
You have to apply for the next funding somewhere and all these things which one has to do. Interesting question. If someone defends the PhD in 2023, will they apply in the 2024 or 2025 call?
Yeah, so these eligibility questions, it's easier to write an email, because we have to consider a lot of things like your maternity, parental, long-term illness, what else. So if you want an eligibility check, I would say, please write me an email, and then I will do this check and give you an advice. I have to say I'm on holiday. I have Friday, my last working day, but then I will be 2 weeks in holidays. So you can contact me and I will answer you this week or in 2 weeks, but you can contact my colleagues as well.
Okay, good. Great to know, to get a bit of a detailed answer then there. Then I think interesting also was if the European Union funding requires any language certifications. No, our audience normally knows that there has to be IELTS or TOEFL, or is this given that the candidate just speaks English? So is there a language certificate required for applicants from outside the European Union?
Okay, so no, you should of course speak English, because your proposal will be written in English and the interview will be in English. So English is important, but you don't have to speak German. But it's of course better to learn German if you want to spend 5 years or so in Germany, because it's easier to do your research.
there's no language certificate required. I think that's good news for our Indian audience, here. Now, interesting question is also, you mentioned the different panels for the ERC grants. Is there a different amount of funding allocated to the 3 panels? So is there more funds in life science, more money available than in social science and humanities? So is there a quota in a way?
So don't be scared. It's really fair. So it's I don't know the exact amount of the different panels, but of course we have 7 panels in social sciences and 11 panels in PE. So of course there is more money for PE because we have more panels, but don't be scared of this. It's fair.
I think it's probably also related to the number of applications. No, if we get a lot of applications, you have more panels. Yeah, I think it answers also the question. It's open. We've seen it nicely in the numbers for Germany that it's sector agnostic. So there's you can go, and we had the question for theology up to environmental science. So it's completely open. So there's no restrictions in the subject fields, if I got it right. No, so every breakthrough idea is welcome for the ERC and the MSCA grants. Good. So if I scroll through the questions, I think there was a lot of questions for PhD. That was not the focus of this session. So the European funding is really focused on postdoctoral, one can say, for the people outside Europe. There was a question if one has to stay in Europe. Maybe you can answer that question. I mean, there is a certain reason why we run the session here in India, but maybe you can reply this as a final reply. And then I have a final question for you. So
you mean in this MSCA postdoctoral fellowship?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So if you are doing a global fellowship, then you have new experiences made in the world, and this is great, but it's European tax money, and so it's important that you come back to Germany or EU. Of course, you don't have to spend your whole life in Germany or the European Union, but it's great if you come back and then do this return phase, and of course then you can go everywhere you want.
But you can apply outside from Europe, so it's open to all applications from all over the world, so no restrictions here. Good, thanks a lot. Then I have a final question for you. What is your #1 tip for an applicant?
From this workshop here, or?
If you would suggest our Indian audience here, so one thing what they should do definitely for an ERC and MSCA application. So what is your #1 tip you would have for them? Okay,
so how many participants do we have here?
We have 57. So but give maybe if you would so what people should take care of. Maybe you can give 1 or 2 pointers which definitely should be there.
Okay, so can we repeat? I had a
Yes. I said, what would be your #1 on the 2 tips for Indian candidates if they would like to apply for these schemes? So what should they definitely do?
Okay, it's important that you have a look at this funding and tender portal, because it's so unfamiliar, this portal. And keep in mind, if you want to do a European research, then it takes time to write this proposal, and if you are an Indian boy or girl, then you have to come along with all this European culture and this university structure and so. Take time, have a look on the German funding nature, and get in touch. I think this is really important, because European funding in the German university system, it's important to understand this, because you have to do your research with your host institution, and so you have to get a host institution. So this is why you have to consider, should I go to Bonn, Cologne, Munich, Berlin, or in any other smaller city? This is important, I think.
Yeah, I think that's an important message. Take your time for preparation. That's why we run the session already in autumn. Application deadlines are next year and at once. So then I think it's very useful in that, touch base with the host institutions and have a look into the German research system. And with regard to application procedures, I think it's fantastic news that KoWi is there to help and even look at proposals for the ERC grant. So that's really, really good news. So thanks so much for the presentation. We will provide the presentation to all the attendees next week. The contact dates have been there. I also would like to draw our attendees because we had a lot of questions, and also for PhD. There are other funding programs available also for postdoctoral research. Please take a look at the website of Research in Germany. There you can filter the German funding schemes for PhD candidates, and for postdoctoral candidates, the German national funding schemes besides the European ones we've presented in today's session. Thanks so much again. The DWH will continue its activities till the end of the year. Our next open event is a Science Circle lecture on sustainable chemistry next week, 24th of November, and we will close the year on 7th of December with an outlook on international cooperation for green hydrogen. If that's a topic interesting to you, then please join this DWH session. Thanks again, Katharina. Greetings to Germany. Always good to have you.
Goodbye.
Thanks for the presentation, and have a nice day. And I hope we stay in touch. We stay in touch with the audience, so everybody has a nice day. And hope to see the one or the other of the audience in one of the other DAD or DWH events. Bye-bye.